What if the only voice that ever truly saw you never had a face? I used to think the whispers in my closet were just stress. But they knew things, personal things. They warned me who to trust, who to fear, and I listened. Until one day, I couldn't tell if I was being protected or controlled. Now I'm torn between a girl who sees too much, a friend who might be watching too closely, and a voice in the dark that refuses to let go. This isn't just a story about obsession. It's about identity, silence, and what happens when the truth whispers louder than your own thoughts. This is Whispers in the Dark, and it's time to listen. Welcome to the Skillful Art of Manipulation podcast. If you haven't already, please consider following us on your favorite podcast platform. Today we present to you Whispers in the Dark. Let's dive into this thrilling narrative together. Chapter 1: The Voice Behind the Door. I don't remember the exact moment I started unraveling. Maybe that's how it works. You don't wake up one morning and realize your mind is slipping. You don't look in the mirror and see the cracks spiderwebbing through your skull. No, it's slower than that. Softer. It comes like fog, silent, creeping, wrapping itself around your thoughts until you can't remember what the air felt like before it got heavy. People say I'm the sweet one. Bubbles, bright, bubbly, delicate. A nickname that stuck long after it should have faded. I carried it into adulthood like a stuffed animal with missing fur. Even in college, people used it. Mostly to make fun of me. Not always to my face. "You're too trusting," my sister Blossom once told me. "You see good in people who would drown you if they saw a chance." But I didn't think that was a flaw. I thought, maybe the world just needed someone like me. Someone soft, in a world built on sharp corners. Someone who believed in forgiveness. In second chances. I didn't realize softness could be the perfect disguise. Not for me, but for whoever was hiding in the dark. It started on a Tuesday night. Late. The kind of late where the dorm halls were dead silent and the air conditioning made the only sound. A soft hum that should have been comforting. But that night it wasn't. The hum had an edge. Attention. I'd been lying in bed, scrolling through my phone with one hand and biting the nail on the other. I do that when I'm anxious. Chew at my fingers like I'm trying to erase myself one hangnail at a time. And then it came. The whisper. So quiet I thought I'd imagined it. Bubbles. I sat up. The room was dark, except for the soft glow of my lamp. My laptop blinked from across the room, casting pale light on the poster of Monet's water lilies above my desk. My closet door was slightly ajar. I hadn't left it open. I always closed it, always. I hate the idea of anything unseen, tucked between clothes, breathing in the dark. "Bubbles, are you listening?" It wasn't a hallucination. The voice had breath behind it. Warmth. It didn't come from my phone. It didn't come from the hallway. It came from inside the room, from behind the closet door. I froze. My heart didn't just beat, it screamed. I felt it in my teeth, in the soles of my feet, like my blood had turned to thunder. Every horror movie I'd ever watched flickered through my mind like a bad slideshow. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared at the closet door like it would open at any second and something, would step out. I told myself not to blink, not to breathe. Maybe if I stayed still, the nightmare would pass over me. The voice didn't come again. And somehow that was worse. I didn't sleep that night. I turned on every light, sat on the bed with my back pressed against the wall. My eyes never left that closet. Not until the sun rose, weak and pale through the blinds. I told myself it was a dream. It had to be. Until I opened the closet. My ballet shoes were on the floor. I hadn't worn them in years. I kept them for nostalgia, a memory of a time when I felt graceful, when I felt like I belonged to something beautiful. They were worn out, the pink satin faded and gray from age. Tucked inside one of them was a folded piece of paper. For words. In neat, deliberate handwriting. "I see you, Bubbles." It kept happening. The whispers returned every few nights, sometimes back to back, sometimes with a week of silence in between. Always at night. Always when I was alone. I started sleeping with my back to the wall. Started keeping a heavy flashlight under my pillow. Started checking the closet twice, sometimes 3 times, before going to bed. It never helped, because the voice always found a way back in. It wasn't just words anymore. It started leaving notes. Slipped under my door. Taped to the inside of my mirror. Hidden in my class folders. Always in that same handwriting. Smooth, elegant, with a kind of precision that made my skin crawl. The messages weren't threats, not at first. They were observations. Warnings. Comments about people I knew. "Chloe lied to you. Marcus copied your research. Professor Delaney thinks you're too emotional. I didn't want to believe them. I tried not to. But I checked. And every time they were right. Word for word, detail for detail. The whispers began to twist inside me, not just as fear but fascination. Curiosity. Who is this? How did they know so much about me? Why were they always right? I started to wonder if I was part of a social experiment. Or maybe a prank. But this wasn't funny. It felt intimate. Like this person knew me better than I knew myself. Like they'd been watching for years. One night, I broke. I stood in the center of my room, shaking, too tired to be afraid anymore. Too angry to be quiet. Who are you? I said aloud. My voice cracked at the edges. What do you want from me? Silence. I waited. Minutes passed. My breath hitched in my throat. And then, soft as ever, the voice came again. I'm the only one who won't lie to you. That was the beginning. Not of the terror. That came later. No, that was the beginning of something more dangerous. The comfort. Because there was something seductive in the way he spoke. He never raised his voice. Never mocked me. Never doubted me. He whispered to me like I was the center of a secret universe. He told me what people really thought. What they said when I left the room. Who to avoid. Who was fake. Who was dangerous. And every time, he was right. I don't know why I started trusting him. Maybe it was the truth in his words. Maybe it was the loneliness. Or maybe it was the way he said my name, like it meant something. Like it mattered. Bubbles, he'd whisper. You've been lied to your whole life. But I'm here now. I'll help you see. See what? I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Because part of me already knew. The people around me were masks. Painted smiles. Carefully rehearsed kindnesses. And behind it all, judgment. Jealousy. Manipulation. But he told me the truth. And I let him in. More than that, I wanted him in. I started whispering back. Small things at first. Questions. Doubts. Confessions. He listened. He always listened. That's how it started. Not with violence. Not with screaming. But with a whisper. And a name I hadn't heard in years, said like a promise. I see you, Bubbles. Chapter 2. The smile behind the mask. The human mind is a fragile thing. I used to think it was a fortress, protected by reason, cemented by logic. But it's not. It's a house of mirrors. One good whisper in the right ear, and suddenly, you can't tell what's real and what's just a reflection. After the night I spoke back to him, the night he said, I'm the only one who won't lie to you, I changed. Not all at once. Not on the surface. I still went to class. Still smiled at people in the halls. Still drank my coffee with 2 sugars and doodled in the margins of my psych notes. But inside, I was splitting apart. There was the version of me the world saw, soft, bright-eyed, polite. And then there was the one I kept locked inside. The one who now waited, breath held, for that whisper in the dark. I started to feel like I was living in 2 dimensions at once, the visible world, and the one he had opened for me. The world of masks. It started small. The first time he told me someone was lying, I confronted them. Chloe, my roommate. She was always overly sweet, always helpful, the kind of girl who left sticky notes on your laptop that said, Smile. You're amazing. But after his whisper, after the note that said, Check the file on her flash drive, I did. She'd copied half of my essay. Word for word. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at her across the room while she brushed her hair and sang softly to her phone playlist. I remember thinking, how many people wear skin that doesn't belong to them? That night when I whispered, You were right, into the darkness. I swear I felt him smile. I couldn't see him. Never did. But I felt his presence, like heat curling around my neck, like breath on the back of my spine. He lived somewhere between my closet door and my nerves, just out of sight, just deep enough to make me question whether I'd imagined him entirely. But I didn't, because every whisper was followed by truth. And with every confirmation, I trusted him more. He began teaching me, not in the traditional sense. There were no lectures, no whiteboards. His lessons came in riddles, observations, instructions. Quiet nudges. Watch the way they smile when you talk about your dreams. Count how many times they change the subject when you mention your sister. Notice how they only text you when they need something. And I did. I watched. I counted. I noticed. And I hated what I saw. The masks were everywhere. My study group friends weren't really friends. They didn't invite me unless they needed help with notes. Chloe only praised me when she wanted to borrow my clothes. Marcus flirted with me when his girlfriend wasn't watching. They all wore smiles like armor. Bright, polished, impenetrable. But behind their eyes was nothing for me. Just self-interest. Envy. Lies. You see it now, don't you? He whispered one night. I was curled up on the bed, knees pulled to my chest, my phone screen still lit up with a message from my mom I hadn't answered. I whispered back, yes. And then softer, more broken. I wish I didn't. His voice returned, warm and soft. Not pitying, never that. But knowing. Understanding. You're awake now. You can't go back to sleep. There's a kind of high that comes with seeing what others don't. At first, it made me feel powerful. Like I was finally part of something important. A secret that no one else was strong enough to hold. He made me feel chosen. He started asking me questions. Simple ones at first. Who do you think is lying to you? Why do you think they avoid the truth? What scares you the most when you're alone? But then they got deeper. More personal. Who do you love that doesn't love you back? When did you first learn that affection can be a trick? If no one ever knew the real you, would they still care? I answered. Honestly. Desperately. Because talking to him was different than talking to anyone else. He didn't interrupt. He didn't pretend to understand just to make himself feel better. He heard me. Every cracked edge. Every desperate plea for meaning. Every unspoken fear I'd hidden under smiles. He became the only voice I trusted. And that trust became a leash. He told me to test people. Not cruelly, not yet. Just small tests. Drop secrets. Watch reactions. Tell Chloe you're thinking of transferring. See if she encourages you. Tell Marcus you feel invisible. Watch how fast he changes the subject. Tell your sister you're not okay. See if she calls you back. And I did. And he was right every time. Chloe shrugged and said, I'm sure wherever you go, you'll be fine. Marcus responded with a gif of a cat falling downstairs. My sister sent a thumbs-up emoji and didn't follow up for a week. They're not who you think they are, he whispered. But you are. I whispered back, who am I? And this time, he didn't answer right away. There was silence, long, full, expectant. Then, you're the only one worth saving. From that night on, I stopped telling myself I was normal. I stopped pretending I belonged to them. The smiling, laughing people who passed me in the dining hall. I started pulling back. Skipping study sessions. Letting messages go unanswered. Watching the world like it was a television show I wasn't part of anymore. They didn't seem to notice. And that confirmed everything he'd told me. One night I asked him, why me? I was sitting cross-legged on my bed, arms wrapped around myself. The room was dark except for the dim blue glow of my desk lamp. My closet door was open now. I didn't close it anymore. It felt rude, somehow like shutting him out. You're the only one who listens, he said. The only one who sees. I closed my eyes, leaned my head back against the wall. Do you ever lie to me? Another long pause. No, he said. But I don't always tell you everything. Not yet. That answer should have scared me. It didn't. Because I'd already chosen him. Over my friends. Over my family. Over myself. I would have done anything he asked. I just didn't realize how far he would go to prove that loyalty. Chapter 3. The Truth in Her Eyes. I started hearing him even when he wasn't there. During lectures, while the professor droned on about abnormal psychology, fitting in hindsight, I'd catch a syllable in the hum of the HVAC system and swear it was him. Sometimes I'd blink too long and swear I saw his handwriting on the corner of my notebook. I knew it wasn't real. I knew. But knowing and feeling are two different things, and I was starting to live entirely in the latter. There was no more waiting for nightfall. His presence followed me like static clinging to my skin. His voice, velvet and precise, echoed in the back of my skull even in daylight. Every word he'd ever whispered had taken root in me, flowering into obsessions I couldn't dig out, not even if I tried. Not that I wanted to. He was the only one who made sense. But everything that makes sense in the dark starts to unravel in the light. And her name was Dahlia. She showed up during a Thursday lecture. I was sitting in the back, half listening, eyes glazed over, pretending to take notes when she slid into the seat next to me like she'd always belonged there. No hello. No nervous glance. Just presence. Unapologetic, sharp, and intentional. I noticed her perfume first. Something clean. Cold even. Like steel kissed with lavender. She didn't smell like anyone else here. She didn't feel like anyone else here. Is this seat taken? She asked finally after she'd already sat down. I shook my head, unsure why my throat was dry. No, it's fine. Dahlia. That's what the professor called her during attendance. Just that name, one word, like she didn't need more. She didn't dress like the others. No crop tops, no Uggs, no tired leggings. She wore a black turtleneck, dark jeans, boots laced tightly like she was always halfway out the door. Her dark brown hair was slicked into a high ponytail, not a strand out of place. Her eyeliner was surgical, winged so cleanly it could cut bone. But it was her eyes that caught me. Not the color, green, maybe hazel, I couldn't tell, but the way they held mine like they were reading a chapter one didn't want anyone to find. Not hostile, not warm either, just exact. I felt exposed under that gaze, seen in a way I wasn't used to, and it rattled me. He noticed it too. That night, his whisper came earlier than usual. No build-up, no mystery. Be careful with her. I was brushing my hair at the mirror when I froze mid-stroke. Who? I asked, heart thudding. But I already knew. Dahlia. I turned toward the closet slowly, as if the direction of my gaze could draw him out. She just sat next to me. That's all. She doesn't belong here. The same words he'd once used for me. I narrowed my eyes at the reflection in the mirror, unsure if I was angry at him or myself. Neither do I. There was a pause, then the soft breath of his disapproval. You belong to me. I didn't sleep that night. Not well, anyway. Dahlia had burrowed into my mind like a splinter I couldn't ignore. Something about her didn't fit the mold of everyone else he warned me about. She hadn't smiled at me like the others did. She hadn't tried to borrow anything or gossip or even ask where I was from. She had just looked at me, like I was a question. And maybe I was. The next day, I found her in the campus cafe, sitting alone with a black notebook open, pen spinning between her fingers. I didn't mean to approach her. I really didn't, but my feet moved on their own, like I was sleepwalking. She looked up before I said a word. You look tired. I blinked. What? Your eyes, she said. They don't match your face. I didn't know how to respond. Do you always talk to strangers like that? No, she said. Just the ones who seem like they're being followed. The air thickened between us. I sat down across from her, heart pounding. Do you believe in ghosts? She smiled, but not kindly. Not cruelly either. Just knowingly. No, but I believe in hauntings. We talked for 47 minutes. I know because I counted. She asked questions, not the polite kind, but the kind that feel like scalpels. What do you dream about when no one's watching? Do you think people can love someone they've never seen? When did you last feel completely alone, and like it was safe? She didn't write anything down. She didn't laugh. She just listened. Like him. But there was a difference. He whispered to me like a secret. She looked at me like a warning. That night, I told him everything. He was silent for a long time. Long enough that I almost thought he wouldn't respond. Long enough that I felt guilty, like I'd cheated on someone who didn't even have a face. You're drifting, he finally whispered. I sat on the floor, back against the closet, knees drawn up like a child. No, I said. I wanted to understand. She's not what she seems. I swallowed. Neither are you. Another pause. I've never lied to you. But I heard it, the strain in his voice. The tension I'd never noticed before. Like he was losing control of the script. Do you need her? He asked. The way he said it. Not do you like her or do you trust her? Do you need her? I didn't know how to answer. And that was answer enough. The next week blurred into confusion. I found myself caught between two magnetic poles, him, whispering warnings through the walls, and Dahlia, looking at me like I wasn't crazy. She never asked me about the voice. Not directly. But she knew. One afternoon, as we sat on the library steps, she said softly, "Sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones we whisper to ourselves." I stiffened. She watched me. What if someone told you a lie for so long, you started needing it to survive? My voice was barely audible. Are you calling me delusional? She shook her head. No, I'm calling you haunted. That night he was furious. I'd never heard him like that. His voice was still soft. It always was, but underneath it, there was something electric. Controlled rage. Jealousy. She's trying to break you. I sat cross-legged on the bed, hugging a pillow to my chest. She hasn't done anything, I said, but the words felt like a betrayal. She's not curious about you, Bubbles. She's watching you. Hunting you. She'll try to take you away. My throat tightened. From what? From me. And suddenly, it wasn't a whisper in the dark anymore. It was a threat. Not from him, but from the world outside him. From her. From everyone. I didn't know what was real anymore. Did Dahlia genuinely care? Or was she just another mask, a better one? Was he protecting me, or was he isolating me? I lay awake that night, eyes open, body tense, heart hammering, trying to decide who the real manipulator was. And that's when I realized the most terrifying truth of all. It might be me. Chapter 4. The Mirror Cracks. There's a particular moment just before a mirror breaks where you can still see yourself, whole, intact, believable. Then comes the first fracture. A line down the center. Hairline. Harmless. You tell yourself it's just the lighting. Just a trick of glass. But you know better. Because even if the reflection stays in place, you've already lost yourself in the split. That's what my mind felt like now. Cracked. Not shattered yet. Not quite. But I could feel the pressure building, like the glass could give way at any second. And when it did, I wasn't sure what part of me would survive. Because the truth was, I didn't know who I was anymore. Not really. There were two versions of me, and they were tearing each other apart. The girl who listened to whispers in the dark, and the girl who sat in daylight with Dahlia, clinging to silence like it might save her. Dahlia had become my anchor, but anchors don't float. And I was still drowning. We started spending more time together. At first, it was casual. A shared table in the library. Lunch under the cherry trees. A text or two late at night just to check in. Then it became routine. Regular. Familiar. And that was dangerous. Because routine leads to comfort, and comfort leads to trust. And trust, well, trust was something I didn't have to give anymore. Not freely, but I gave it anyway. Because Dahlia made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time, real. Not watched. Not judged. Not studied. Just seen. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't tell me I was crazy or dramatic or overly sensitive. She didn't pity me. And maybe that's why I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone. Not even him. Like how my mom used to call me dramatic every time I cried. Like how my father once said I was too emotional for this world. Like how I hated my reflection because it never looked as confident as I pretended to be. Dahlia listened. She never interrupted. And she never filled the silence unless I needed her to. Sometimes I looked at her and thought, if I'd met her first, would I have needed him at all? But I had met him first. And he wasn't letting go. The more I confided in her, the more restless he became. The whispers changed. Grew louder. Sharper. No longer tender truths. Now they were commands wrapped in concern. She's not your friend. She's manipulating you. She's watching you for someone else. She's going to take everything I gave you and destroy it. I started to believe him. Then I didn't. Then I did again. The whiplash of belief and doubt began to make my head spin. I stopped trusting my own thoughts. Started second-guessing every word, every glance. When Dahlia texted me thinking of you, I spent an hour analyzing what that meant. Was she thinking of me with affection? With suspicion? With concern? With pity? The line between intimacy and inspection blurred. One night, after hours of overthinking, I deleted all our texts. Every photo. Every shared playlist. Then I re-downloaded it all 20 minutes later. That's how fragile I'd become. A girl undone by digital ghosts. The hallucinations started soon after. Not full-on visions, not yet. Just flickers. Shadows that moved in corners where there should have been stillness. Faces in windows that disappeared when I turned. A soft knock on the closet door that came even when I wasn't home. The first time I heard his voice during the day, I dropped my coffee in the middle of the quad. "Bubbles," he hissed, low and furious. "You're slipping." I clutched my chest like I'd been punched from the inside. My vision swam. The campus blurred into a smear of light and sound. I collapsed onto the nearest bench, gasping. "You said you needed me," he continued. "Don't make me doubt you." I curled in on myself, arms crossed tightly, as if I could fold small enough to escape his reach. And just like that, he was gone, like mist burned away by sun. But his words stayed, etched into the marrow of my bones. "Don't make me doubt you." I didn't tell Dahlia what was happening. Not at first. I told myself it was to protect her. But the truth was, I didn't want to see her eyes fill with that silent disappointment. I didn't want to feel her pull away the way everyone else had when I got too intense. But she noticed. Of course she did. "You've been quiet," she said one afternoon, as we sat in her car parked on the edge of the forest trail she liked to walk. I stared out the window. The trees were still. No wind. No movement. They looked like they were holding their breath. "So have you," I murmured. Dahlia shifted, unbuckling her seatbelt and turning to face me. "Is it him?" The question sliced clean through me. I didn't answer. Her hand found mine, not forceful, not invasive. Just there. Solid. "You don't have to tell me everything," she said softly. "But please don't lie to me." I closed my eyes. I didn't lie. I just said nothing. That night I confronted him. Not with screams. Not with anger. With silence. I didn't respond to his whisper. I didn't lean into the closet. I didn't ask him what he wanted. I just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears leaking into my ears, pretending I didn't hear him at all. He didn't take it well. I gave you the truth, he snapped. I gave you eyes to see. And now you close them. Still, I said nothing. I warned you, he hissed. She'll turn you against yourself. I bit down on my lip until it bled. The taste of copper filled my mouth. My heart felt like it was climbing up my throat. She's already in your head, Bubbles. But you don't have to lose. Not if you come back to me. Come back. Like he was a place. Like I belonged to him. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling all night. At the cracks in the paint. At the slow swirl of the fan. I tried to remember what silence used to sound like before he invaded it. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and almost didn't recognize myself. There were purple half-moons under my eyes. My lips were pale. My pupils were too wide, too dark. I looked haunted, like a girl caught between exorcisms. I reached for my makeup bag, but something stopped me. Instead, I picked up a black marker and walked to the full-length mirror. And I drew a crack, a jagged line right down the center. A reminder that even when the reflection looked whole, the glass was broken. Chapter 5, The Bleeding Hourglass. They say that time heals everything, but they forget to mention how quietly it kills, too. I used to think of time as a river, something smooth, steady, constant. But it's not. Time is an hourglass made of bone, and I swear mine had started to bleed. Grain by grain, I could feel pieces of myself slipping through the narrow middle, falling into some unreachable chamber I would never get back. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't flip it over. Not this time. There was something about the way Dahlia started watching me. It wasn't that her gaze changed, it was that I changed. Before, I found comfort in her stillness, her attention, the way she never seemed surprised by the darkness I carried. But lately, every time her eyes lingered, I felt cornered. Like I was under examination. Like she was trying to read the small print in my soul. Like maybe she finally saw the cracks, and worse, understood them. "You're shaking," she said one morning. We were walking down the old stone path behind the science building, leaves crunching under our feet like brittle secrets. "No, I'm not," I lied. But my hands were trembling, fingertips twitching against my sleeves. I didn't even realize it until she stopped walking and took my wrist gently in her hand. Her fingers were warm, steady, real. I wanted to cry just from the contrast. "You haven't been sleeping," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm fine. Bubbles." I said I'm fine, and then I pulled away. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because if she held on a second longer, I would have broken right there in the middle of the path. And I couldn't afford to shatter yet. Not while the voice was still whispering. Not while the hourglass still bled. He'd grown more possessive. Not in words, he never screamed, never shouted. But the frequency had changed. The tone, what used to be gentle guidance, now bordered on obsession. It was like he lived inside my veins. Like he pulsed every time my heart beat. "Don't let her see your fear," he warned. "I'm not afraid of her," I whispered back, curled in a fetal position under the covers. "No," he said softly. "You're afraid of what you become without me." And he wasn't wrong. That was the worst part. Because he'd wrapped himself around my identity like ivy around a dying tree. He grew as I withered. And I let him. Welcomed him. Clung to him. What would I be without him now? Just a girl with trembling hands and fractured sleep. Just a girl who saw too much and felt too deeply. He gave it shape, structure, meaning. Without him, all I had left were questions. And Dahlia. I started keeping a journal again. Not a real one. Not something I'd ever let anyone read. It wasn't about documentation, it was about containment. If I could spill the chaos onto paper, maybe I could control it. Maybe I could slow the bleeding. The entries weren't poetic. They were raw. Scribbles. Repetitions. Lists of things I saw that didn't make sense. Half-formed questions that never led anywhere. Blacked out lines I didn't want to reread. April 2nd. He says she's planning something. But she's never touched me. Never pushed. Just watched. Am I paranoid or is she patient? April 4th. I saw my reflection move when I didn't. I think I'm being watched, even when I'm alone. Especially when I'm alone. April 6th. My hands don't feel like mine. I watched them tie my shoes and didn't recognize the motion. Whose body am I wearing? I ripped out 3 pages after that. The thoughts weren't safe anymore. Not even to myself. Dahlia noticed the change. She always noticed. "I miss your voice," she said one afternoon. We were sitting under a rusted gazebo near the edge of the campus woods. The sky was gray, not stormy, just tired. The way I felt inside. "I'm still talking. Not the way you used to." I looked away. Maybe I've run out of things to say. No, she said. You've just started hiding them better. I felt something sting behind my eyes, but I blinked it away. She pulled something out of her coat pocket, a small, smooth stone. Jet black. Cold-looking. It's obsidian, she said, placing it in my hand. Volcanic glass. Ancient cultures believed it could draw poison out of the soul. Are you saying I'm poisoned? I'm saying you're heavy, she said. And I don't want you to carry it alone. I clenched the stone so tightly it cut into my palm. That night, the voice was livid. You're giving her pieces of you, he said. Pieces that belong to me. I was sitting in the shower, hot water pounding against my scalp like punishment. I'd left the lights off. I didn't want to see myself tonight. She's my friend, I whispered. No, he snapped, and I heard something new in his voice, not anger, but hurt. She's replacing me. I said nothing. I was here first, he added, like a child abandoned. Still, I said nothing. She doesn't understand you the way I do. She doesn't want anything from me, I finally whispered. And that was when the silence came. Thick, cold, final. He didn't respond that night. He didn't come back the next. Not for days. At first, I thought I'd won. I walked lighter, breathed easier. I even laughed, a real messy laugh, when Dahlia spilled iced coffee down her shirt and muttered curses under her breath. The silence was a relief. A detox. The world felt louder, yes, but mine again. But then, I started to miss him. Not the control, not the fear, but the certainty. He was wrong about a lot of things, but he'd made me feel chosen. And once you've felt chosen, ordinary feels like ash in your mouth. Dahlia noticed the shift again. You're grieving, she said one night, as we lay on a blanket under the stars. A ritual weed started to mark our quiet victories. I'm not. You are. And that's okay. I turned my head. You don't know what I'm grieving. Maybe not, she said. But I know what it looks like when someone's trying to convince themselves they're okay. And I know what it looks like when they're not. I closed my eyes. Do you think I'm broken? I think you're in pieces, she said. But I've seen what you look like when you start to put yourself back together. Later that night, I dreamed of the hourglass again. But this time, it wasn't blood falling, it was light. And it wasn't cracking, it was melting. I woke up gasping, clutching my chest. And I heard it. The whisper. So faint I almost thought it was the wind. But it wasn't the same voice. It wasn't his voice. It was mine. Chapter 6, where the silence sings. There's a kind of silence that isn't quiet. It doesn't soothe, doesn't bring peace. It vibrates. It echoes. It screams without sound. And that's the kind of silence I lived in now. After he stopped whispering. After I stopped answering. After everything inside me fell still and strange, like a forest right before the storm breaks. I thought the silence would feel like freedom. It didn't. It felt like standing on the edge of a rooftop, the wind pulling at your sleeves, and realizing there's no one behind you to stop you from jumping. Not because they don't care, but because they don't know you're there. For so long, I'd hated the whispers. Feared them. Needed them. Relied on them like rails for a train that no longer knew how to move on its own. But now that they were gone, the emptiness left behind was worse. Because it didn't feel like peace. It felt like absence. Dahlia stayed close. Closer than ever. She started walking me to class again. Sitting with me at lunch, even when I didn't say a word. Sharing her music, dark, ambient tones that filled the spaces between us like slow-moving waves. She didn't ask for answers. She didn't press. She just existed next to me like a lighthouse in fog. You don't need to talk, she said one evening, as we sat on the hood of her car, legs crossed, watching the stars. I just want you to stay. I didn't know how to explain to her that I didn't know where I'd gone. That part of me had burned out quietly, like a candle in a locked room. That I was still here, but only barely. She offered me her hand. I didn't take it at first. Then I did. Not because I needed saving, but because I needed to feel something real. That night I didn't dream. And that was more terrifying than any nightmare I'd ever had. No hourglass. No reflections. No voice. Just black. Unmoving. Unyielding. Unforgiving. When I woke up, I felt like I'd been buried under it. Like something inside me had gone silent in a way that couldn't be reversed. I started speaking less. Not out of spite. Not out of fear. Just fatigue. Words felt too heavy in my mouth. Like stones I couldn't lift without choking. I went days where my conversations consisted of single syllables, nods, forced smiles. People stopped trying after a while. All except Dahlia. She filled in the spaces I couldn't. I brought you peppermint tea today. You always said it helped your headaches. I remembered you liked the sound of rain, so I made you a playlist. You looked like you needed a laugh, so I saved the world's dumbest meme for you. She kept showing up. Every day. Every hour. Sometimes I wanted to tell her to stop. To run. To save herself from whatever rot was growing inside me. But some small, quiet part of me was grateful. Even if I couldn't say it. And then one afternoon she brought me a gift. It was wrapped in black tissue paper, tied with a thin red string. She placed it in my lap without explanation, then stepped back and waited. I stared at it for a full minute before untying the string. Inside was a mirror. A small hand mirror. Vintage. Oval-shaped, with a tarnished silver frame and tiny cracks along the glass edge. Not enough to distort the reflection. Just enough to remind you it had been through something. I looked up at her, confused. She smiled. I found it at a flea market. The woman who sold it said it was from a dressing room in an old theater. Said it had good memory. I thought, maybe you'd want to see yourself through something that remembers being whole. I stared at the mirror, and for the first time in weeks I saw myself, not as a ghost, but as a girl. Tired, haunted, hollowed out, but present. Still here. That night I lit a candle. I sat on the floor with the mirror, the flame flickering shadows across my reflection. I studied myself the way Dahlia studied me. With stillness, with curiosity, with something close to compassion. I whispered, "Who am I without him?" And to my surprise, I didn't cry. Because I wasn't sure I needed to anymore. The silence no longer felt like a void. It felt like a choice. And slowly, breath by breath, I started choosing myself again. But nothing in this story leaves quietly. Not even the whispers. Not even him. It happened 3 days later. I was brushing my teeth. The room was warm. Safe. The scent of lavender oil drifted from my diffuser. Dahlia had texted me goodnight. My heart felt steady for once. No static. No panic. And then, I heard it. A breath. Not mine. Not behind me. Inside me. Followed by a voice. Fainter than before. Worn thin like an old record. But still him. "You forgot me." I dropped the toothbrush. It clattered against the sink like a gunshot. My knees buckled, and I gripped the counter to stay upright. My pulse erupted in my ears, my chest, my throat. "I didn't forget," I whispered. Silence. Then laughter. Not joyful. Not cruel. Something worse. Resigned. "You thought you could bury me," he said. "But I live in the parts of you that no one else wants." I gritted my teeth. "You're wrong." "Am I?" he breathed. "Who stayed when you were screaming into pillows? Who listened when no one else cared? Who gave you a voice when yours was too afraid to speak?" I shook my head. "You twisted it. You made me doubt everyone. Even myself." "I freed you," he said. "You begged for truth. I gave it. I never lied." He wasn't wrong. But that didn't make him right. "I don't want you anymore." There was a pause. And then quieter, more intimate than ever. "But you still need me." I broke the mirror. I didn't mean to. I threw it across the room, and it shattered against the wall, splinters of silver and glass scattering across the floor like teeth. The candle blew out from the wind of my scream. And I collapsed, trembling, curled in on myself like a question with no answer. The next morning, I swept up the shards. Each one caught the light differently, fragments of a self I no longer recognized. I bled a little. Not from carelessness. From inevitability. You can't clean up broken glass without shedding something of your own. I tucked one shard into my pocket. A reminder that even shattered, I had the power to cut back. Later, when Dahlia saw the bandage on my palm, she didn't ask. She just held my hand and kissed the gauze, like sealing a letter that didn't need to be read out loud. "You don't have to tell me what happened," she said softly. "Just tell me this. Did you survive it?" I nodded. It wasn't a confident nod, but it was enough. And maybe for now, that was everything. Chapter 7. The Room with No Echo. There's a sound a person makes when they finally let go. It isn't a scream. It isn't a sob. It isn't loud at all. It's a breath, low, shaky, half-forgotten. A breath that says, "I've been holding this for too long, and I don't know who I am without it." A breath that opens up a wound and closes it all in the same motion. I took that breath the morning everything ended, and in that silence, I found myself again. But I had to walk through the deepest dark to get there. The voice didn't leave after the mirror broke. It changed. It grew quieter, but more insidious. He no longer whispered to warn or guide. Now he murmured to haunt, to taunt, to test. "She doesn't love you. She's waiting for you to fall apart so she can be the hero. You were sharper when you were mine. And worst of all, you don't know who you are without me." He wasn't wrong. I hated him for that. Because somewhere in all this, between the paper-thin walls of my dorm room and the closet that had become a cathedral of lies, I had shaped myself around him. He was more than a voice. He was a mirror, a compass, a god. And now he was a parasite. Dahlia knew something had shifted, even if I didn't say it out loud. She watched me more carefully. Her touches lingered longer. Her voice dropped in pitch when she asked how I was doing, like she was speaking to a fragile animal she didn't want to spook. But I wasn't fragile anymore. I was breaking differently now. Breaking forward. It was raining the night everything snapped. Not a soft, moody rain. Not the kind you curl up under. This was a violent rain. Horizontal. Cold. Apocalyptic. Thunder like bones cracking in the sky. Campus went dark. Power outage. Phones died. Wi-Fi disappeared. Lights blinked out one by one like a slow, suffocating death. I was alone. Not just alone in the room. Alone in the building. Everyone else had gone to the main hall for emergency shelter. Dahlia had texted me twice before my battery died. "Are you okay? I'm coming to get you." But I never answered. Because the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside. And I knew this was the night it would end. One way or another. I lit a candle. Sat on the floor. Faced the closet door. And waited. I didn't have to wait long. The whisper came, not from behind the door this time, but from inside my own chest. "I knew you'd come back to me." My voice trembled, but not with fear. "I'm not here for you." He laughed. Soft. Sweet. Cruel. "You say that, but here you are. Candle lit. Eyes wide. Alone. It's poetic, really. I'm not alone." A pause. Calculating. "Oh, her. She's not here, Bubbles. She can't save you from what lives in your bones." "She doesn't have to save me," I whispered. "I'm not a child anymore." "Then why do you still cry in the dark?" I closed my eyes. "Because you taught me to." And then I stood up. No trembling. No stutter step. I walked to the closet and opened the door. Inside, darkness. Familiar. Claustrophobic. But I didn't look away. "Come out," I said. Silence. "You've haunted me long enough. You want me to hear you? See you? Then show yourself." Something shifted. The air turned cold, heavy. A presence bloomed behind the clothes, like breath, like rot, like memory. And then, he stepped forward. Or at least something did. I couldn't see his face. Just the suggestion of one. Built from shadows and fragments of voices I'd heard 100 times over. He was tall. Too tall. Limbs too long. Like he was made of all the wrong proportions. But it wasn't his shape that terrified me. It was the feeling. Like standing in front of every bad decision I'd ever made, stitched together in human form. "You made me," he whispered. "I exist because you let me." "I know," I said. And then, I stepped forward too. He reached out. I didn't move away. His hand, if you could call it that, brushed my cheek. Cold. Familiar. "You miss me," he said. "Admit it." I stared straight into the blur where his eyes should have been. "I missed being understood," I said. "I missed feeling like I wasn't crazy. I missed the version of me who could name every fear without apology." He smiled, crooked, victorious. "But," and the word hung in the air like smoke, "you also made me small." The smile faltered. "You shrunk me into paranoia, fed me poison and called it truth. You wrapped your lies in care and told me it was love." He tried to speak. I didn't let him. "I believed you when you said I wasn't enough. That everyone would leave me. That only you saw the truth. But you never saw me. Not really. You only saw what you wanted to shape." He snarled, voice rising. "I protected you." "No," I said. "I prepared you." "No." "I made you strong." "No," I repeated. And then I did what I should have done months ago. I stepped into the closet, reached into the dark, and pulled the door shut behind me. It was silent in there. Not peaceful, but real. Every breath echoed. Every heartbeat. I could feel him all around me, trying to take shape again. Trying to remind me of all the reasons I'd needed him. But I didn't speak. Didn't answer. Didn't flinch. I just stood there, eyes closed, hands by my sides. And slowly, painfully, his presence faded. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just unraveled, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the sound of my own breath. And then even that became calm. When I opened the door, the storm was gone. Outside, the rain had stopped. The moon had come back. Everything smelled like clean earth and broken tension. And Dahlia was standing at the threshold of the dorm. Soaked, panting, wild-eyed. When she saw me, her breath hitched. I smiled. It was small, tired, but whole. She ran to me and wrapped her arms around me so tight I almost vanished. But I didn't. I stayed. I was here. Later, in her car, with the windows fogged and our fingers intertwined, she asked softly, "What happened?" I looked at her, really looked, and said, "I let go of the voice I thought was protecting me." She didn't speak, but her hand tightened around mine. "You don't have to be loud to reclaim yourself," I said. "You just have to be willing to sit in the quiet and not fill it with someone else's story." She exhaled. "Does it still hurt?" she asked. I looked out the window. The moonlight shone on the broken mirror shard I'd kept in my pocket. A small piece of the girl I used to be. "No," I said. "Not anymore." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I meant it.